Presented by Malika Andrews, live from Los Angeles.
Brandon Ingram, throw it down. Another show. Jason Tatum, fadeaway, goes down. Paul leaves it up top for Booker. Baby, what a three from Trae Young. Bang! Oh, he is not human. Jaylen Brown is hitting from everywhere. At the horn. Oh, Jaylen Brown is at another level. Look at the break. Here comes Giannis. Falls. Team ahead. Oh. Giannis is going to take this shot. Fires. 50-piece for Giannis.
Man, how did you even decide what game to watch yesterday? Welcome to NBA Today. I'm Malika Andrews. 50 for Giannis. We're going to dive into that game in just a little bit here. Plus, the Celtics, they absolutely destroyed the Sixers, and they made history in the process. We're going to get into that. And Adam Silver, he joined Get Up this morning and addressed how New York's vaccine mandate will affect the postseason. So we're going to hear from the commissioner in just a little bit. And then we're also going to get to the Warriors, the Jazz, the Lakers, the Nuggets. But I'm burying the lead here because joining me today is not only senior writer extraordinaire Ramona Shelburne, but making her in-studio debut is Doris Burke. Thank you for being here, my friend.
Oh, my pleasure, my pleasure.
Well, Big Perk is going to join us in just a little bit, but we have to start in Pfizer Forum because Giannis, after his, as Perk would say, 50-piece wing Cajun rub dinner, here's what he had to say.
You know, 50s, 40s, 30s, all those things, accolades going to come, but they only come with winning. If your main focus, your number one thing is winning, you do whatever it takes to finish the game. Sometimes you got to shoot more. Sometimes you got to defend more. Sometimes everything else comes. But if you're thinking about, let me get 50, let me get it doesn't work that way. You got to always focus in winning games.
But here's the thing. Giannis needed just 21 shots to score his 50 points. That is the fourth fewest attempts in a 50-point game in NBA history. So this was also Giannis's first 50-point game since doing so in Game 6 of the Finals. And after which, you might remember, he went to Chick-fil-A and he did this.
Are you going to say your order?
Can I have a 50-piece? So can I have, please, a 50-piece Mac Minis? 50, exactly. Okay. Not 51. None. 49 chicken minis, yes. 50.
Not 51, 50. Well, we can't talk about Giannis without bringing in Big Perk. So, Big Perk, has Giannis reinserted himself into the MVP discussion officially after this game?
Well, Malika, he never left. He never left, and I don't want us to get bored with Giannis' greatness. It was a period of time when LeBron James was with the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Miami Heat in the Eastern Conference, and we got bored with his greatness. It was a time where he could have won MVP every single year, and that's what we're looking at for us looking at Giannis. Look, this MVP conversation is going to fluctuate month to month, but I will say this. He's in that conversation. I still give a nod a little bit to MB, but he's second on my list. But I tell you what he is. He's the most dominant player in the NBA, and that's without a debate.
DB, what do you think?
So I'm completely on board, Perk, because I could name 2 years where LeBron James should have won at least 2 other MVPs. The year Derrick Rose, he was a very worthy candidate. I thought LeBron was the MVP that year. But listen, Giannis is in the conversation. There's no question about it. I've spent the better part of the last 2 months thinking this was a race between 2 guys. I know who she's got, Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic. Don't dismiss what Nikola is doing out in the Western Conference with a team that has been without major pieces for much of the year. But Giannis Antetokounmpo, here's where you should be afraid if you're the NBA. I lost my mind a little bit this year, Perk, when I said he was going to shoot 35% from 3. Malika needed to hit me with that ring when I predicted he was going to do that. But here's your problem if you're the NBA. In December, Giannis shot 33% on jump shots. In January, 36, and in February, 48. He's a problem,
48.
and he's becoming a bigger problem. But he's absolutely in the MVP, and here's why. If you look at NBA.com, Perk, they have him as the lead candidate for Defensive Player of the Year. Don't forget what he's doing that side, Moan.
Well, Tim Bontemps always sends around his straw poll,
right?
And, at the quarter marks, right? And he just sent one of those, and it got me thinking. I haven't beaten Jokic 1-2 right now. Number 3, I had to put Chris Paul there. I mean, look what the Phoenix Suns are doing. Did you watch the game last night and the way he closed that out?
Captain clutch.
Every time. But Giannis has been on every single one of those ballots. Always top 5, but like as you say, Perk, I think people forget his greatness. I think we get used to it, and his seasons get compared against other seasons, other great seasons that he's had. But this is going to be a long one. I mean, a couple months ago we were talking Steph Curry's MVP, then Kevin Durant. It's a little like last year where it might be last man standing. But I think Giannis has always been in the top 5. The question is, does he jump over Embiid, Jokic, Chris Paul, John Morant?
She makes a great point about Phoenix because they're 23-3 in the clutch. What's happening down the stretch of games that were possession ball game? Unbelievable.
And it's also something that you can't take for granted, Doris Burke, because that's another thing. Like Giannis's greatness, Chris Paul has been so good in the clutch that you have to make sure to still appreciate his magic. But I was having this conversation with Mike Wilbon and Jalen Rose the other day about who is the greatest international player ever. And Hakeem Olajuwon was still at the top of both of their lists. And Jalen Rose said by a large amount. And I said, are you sure? Because there's only been 3 players ever to win Finals MVP, MVP, and Defensive Player of the Year in the same year. Hakeem, Michael Jordan, and Giannis Antetokounmpo. Wow. So Giannis is coming. He is up on his heels. But this isn't just about Giannis, as we saw in the finals last year, Doris. So who else are you watching on this Bucks roster?
Well, I think the one key addition, when you think about Pat Connaughton, who's now out of the lineup, they need some defensive help. You traded away Dante DiVincenzo, who is exceptional defensively and multi-positional defensively. The pickup of DeAndre Bembry is a big deal to me. Think about what he did for the Brooklyn Nets. He raised their level defensively. Again, a guy who can guard cross-positionally. You're never going to draw a play for him, but is he opportunistic in transition, which they want to be? Yes. Can he make an open 3 that Giannis is going to generate? No question about it. I just think this is a big pickup for a team that is down a big-time piece in Pat Connaughton. I love the addition.
Absolutely.
And you told me there's 2 roster spots open still.
Yeah, they still have 2 open roster spots, and that is after officially signing DeAndre Bembry today, this morning. I do want to stick with the East here because another huge storyline coming off of last night's insane slate of games was the Boston Celtics. And Boston is literally showing no signs of slowing down here. So they faced the Celtics last night. There's James Harden ringing the bell. I don't know what he's wearing, but I'm not going to spend any time on that. All right, let's go to the first half because this was a scary moment for Boston. Take a look at Marcus Smart here. His right ankle, it looked like he stepped on Joel Embiid's foot. Let's take another look. He would not return after he hit those free throws with that ankle sprain. And watch, he had to be helped off of the court here. But Boston, they really didn't need Smart in this game because take a look at this. The Celtics up. Jaylen Brown hits the shot from the wing. So then let's go to just under 5 seconds remaining in the first half. The Celtics up by 24. Not anymore. Brown nails another 3 with 2 defenders on him there. Look at that. 26 points, 5 of 5 on 3-pointers in the first half. So then in the second, they did not slow down. Jason Tatum, he had to have a word. Bam. What would Mike Breen say? I think he would say bang on that shot. And the Celtics, they beat the 76ers easily. Take a listen to them after the game.
This is probably one of the better defensive teams in my career. We've had some really good defensive units. It feels like hard performance. It feels really good. It feels connected. We got a lot of guys each and every night just stepping up on that side of the ball, and we're still getting better.
To see the crowd leave in probably third quarter is an impressive thing for us, and I think our team relished that. And so what I was impressed with was after a big lead in the first half, coming out of only the 16 in the third quarter. So there was no let up as far as that, to have that road warrior mentality. It'll help us as a group overall.
All right, let's take a look at the 25 3-pointers the Celtics rained down in their 48-point win. So 10 different players hit at least one of them. So here's a wild stat for you, okay? With Philly making just 23 field goals, that was total. This was the first time a team made more threes than their opponent made total field goals since the 3-point line was instituted. That's according to Elias. So my goodness on that one. So with all that being said, I want to start with you, Doris, because what did the Celtics prove to you with a win like that?
Well, I don't think it's necessarily this win. I think it's what's happened over the last 13 games. And let's start on the defensive end. I believe it's now 11 of 13 who have been held under 95 points. But let's consider what's happening now on the offensive end. Their passes per game are up by almost 17 to 20 every game. it's becoming less about isolation basketball for the two J's. And Perk knows this. There's going to be a time, and the most critical time, where the tough twos and the contested threes and isolation situations in the playoffs are required. But Perk, I'm curious about something. This is a team that, with the exception of Grant Williams, across the board has been guy man-to-man below 2-point and 3-point percentage. Everybody has shot a worse percentage. With what they're doing on the defensive end now and the change offensively we're seeing, what's their ceiling? Like, how good can this basketball team be?
To be honest with you, DB, they don't have a ceiling. And I believe that the East is wide open, and the way that Jason Tatum has been playing. Look, we already know Jason Tatum is one of the most prolific scorers in the game today. But the other things that he's been bringing to the game, for us blocking shots, defending, making others around him better. And he's been getting double-figure rebounds, but most importantly, he's been playing mad. He's been playing angry. And by the way, the trade deadline, the Celtics were probably one of the teams that flew under the radar for as one of the underrated pickups in Derek White. I love what he brings to the table. So when you look at what they're doing now, not only do you have ball movement, but you have player movement along with guys knowing their role. Rob Williams, he's rolling to the basket, knowing that he might not get the lob, but he's opening it up for someone else. You have Marcus Smart not taking those ill-advised threes, DB, or those ill-advised shots, but he's also being the facilitator. JB, JT, y'all get to moving. I'm going to drop these dimes. So I think that's the turning point, along with a month and a half ago, JB and JT, they had a coming to Jesus meeting together and sat down and hashed things out about how they could make it work, and they turned the corner.
Well, and Doris Burke and I were in Boston the other day. We got a front row seat to this show because they've won 9 straight now. And I got a chance to sit down with Derek White for a little bit. And what he's going through right now, DB and I talked about this. His wife is pregnant. They had to move to Boston, trying to find new physicians over there. His stuff is actually all still in Texas. He's going back during the All-Star break to try to move all of his stuff. He's living out of a hotel. But with all of that, he is still making an immediate impact and is such a key fit on this team, DB.
Perk knows it. Doesn't matter if it's your fault. You're getting blamed if I've got to switch obstetricians, period.
That's right. That's it. Point blank, period. All right. We still have so much more to come, you all, on NBA Today, because Adam Silver, he spoke about the COVID-19 vaccine heading into the playoffs. So how what he said affects Kyrie Irving. Plus, the Jazz, they have quietly been on a tear since Donovan Mitchell's return. So DB breaks down 3 straight versus the Jazz. They're winners of 6 straight. So from Utah's perspective, the wins have mostly coincided with the return of Donovan Mitchell. So what is it about their star that makes them go to this degree, Doris?
That's the tandem, right? It's the highest pick and roll tandem in the league. You think about Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell, how they go about the business. Let's remember the Jazz lead the league in scoring and are number 1 in efficiency. So over 3,000 picks in their time together as a tandem. So pick and roll. You allow Donovan Mitchell to get downhill. Big time athlete, unbelievable finisher. Consider this. Guy's shooting a career high 65% in the restricted area. Now he gets downhill again. Rudy is rolling. You've got to think as a defender, I'm in jail because my man can finish right or he can finish left. The problem is it's not just Donovan, right? You've got to be aware of this. You are the big. Now Donovan's hurt you multiple times. He's coming downhill and defenders going, oh boy, I got to stop it. You came off the body of Rudy Gobert and my man puts it on your head. That's part of the bind. The other bind, so you've got the downhill Donovan, you've got the diving Rudy Gobert at the cup. The other part is now, okay, you've tagged, you've now gone back to Rudy, but because you're so concerned about Donovan, look at the closeout that's required. You're trying to cut off the drive, and Mr. Bogdanovich gets a wide open shot. The Jazz are a problem offensively. They're 10th in the league on the defensive end. The only time they've struggled is when Rudy Gobert or Donovan Mitchell was out. Like, let's be aware, this is a really good basketball team.
They struggled without Rudy Gobert, but that's the Jazz side of things. The Lakers, to their credit, though, they did hang tough against the Warriors on ABC on Saturday night over the weekend, but joined again now by Ramona Shelburne. And you know the Lakers like basically nobody else. So what's the biggest challenge these Lakers are facing right now?
I mean, look, the easy answer would be integrating Russell Westbrook better, but I actually think it's a larger issue with they don't have an identity. on the offensive side or the defensive side of the ball. When the Lakers won in 2020, they're the third best defense in the league. Last year, even without LeBron James and Anthony Davis for a lot of the season because both had injuries, they had a top 3 defense all year long. This year, 19th. Okay, when you can't stop anybody, and a lot of that is what we were just talking about with Boston. When you play good defense, it translates on the other side because you get opportunities, you get fast break opportunities, which is where Russell Westbrook can thrive. But when you don't have that cohesion on the defensive end, you're constantly playing catch up. The Lakers in that game, great against the Warriors, but there's a reason LeBron James 1 for 10 in the fourth quarter, 2 for 15 in the second half, missed the free throws at the end. Maybe he's a little tired because they're playing catch-up all game.
Right. Those free throws were a little bit brutal to watch. Big Perk, what do you see as the biggest ailment that's facing the Lakers right now?
Everything, and I've been saying it the last few months. But the one thing that stands out to me and is simple is the word sacrifice, and it starts at the top from LeBron James, Russell Westbrook, and Anthony Davis. When I see young teams like the Memphis Grizzlies having 30 assists, when I see a team like the Celtics figure it out, they start to have the ball movement. The Lakers play too much hero basketball. When you look at their wins, it comes down to the stretch of, Malik Monk, he had an awesome fourth quarter, or LeBron James took over the fourth, or Russell Westbrook finally played great in the fourth, or Anthony Davis. It's never done collectively, and it's really disturbing because you would think out of all these Hall of Famers, all these veterans that are on the team, that they could figure out the word sacrifice, and they can't.
Well, Doris, you're on this call tonight, so I know you've been digging into the film for the last couple of days. What stood out to you?
Well, I think in reading the clips, the one thing that really captured my imagination the last 2 days, or really kind of made me nervous, was LeBron James likening the knee situation to what happened with the high ankle sprain, saying the thing I need is rest and I don't have that luxury. I'm just going to give you a couple of numbers, and this goes to what Perk is talking about and Ramona in terms of fatigue. Look at LeBron James's shot profile and his efficiency first half to second half. He's borne a very heavy burden. His points per game in the second half, down by 1. His field goal percentage first half to second half, down 10 percentage points. Look at the three-point shooting. Not only is he going to hang and take more three-point opportunities in the second half, that could go directly to your fatigue point. This is the guy who manages his body and an NBA calendar as well as anybody. And he clearly takes more jump shots this year, 7.9 threes. By far the most ever in his career. There's so much going on with the Lakers, but I'll tell you what, the thing that captured my attention more than anything else was that story of, I need rest and I don't have that luxury, and it's just like my ankle sprain. I'm thinking, oh boy, that's trouble.
I mean, look, LeBron, one of the members of the coaching staff said to me, he goes, it's really hard to watch LeBron right now be this good, but each of these games is like 1.5 games for him. I mean, that's the burden on him as a playmaker and as a leader on this team when they just don't have an identity. Their offense is whatever LeBron can create. I mean, that's a lot.
Well, their offense is whatever LeBron can create. And to your point earlier about the defense, it is so rare for a team to be able to win a championship and finish outside the top 10
That's
in
right.
defense. And when you were listening to LeBron, we've got to go back just a little bit. When the Bucks came into town and they were talking about playing the defending champions, he said, we know that we are nowhere near where the Milwaukee Bucks are now. And they're running out of time to figure it out. I want to say a huge thank you to Doris Burke for joining us today. Thank you so much. I know you have a very busy
You were
schedule.
outnumbered if you were in Texas and you're here. Thank you for having me.
Should have seen her making shots.
I was going to say, she was on the hoop earlier, and she was asking for you because she needed a defender. So that means you need to come out here, Doris. That means you need to come out here, Doris.
I want no smoke.
Well, Doris Burke would give it to you. Thank you so much for joining us here on NBA Today. All right, without an up-to-the-minute update on all things Brooklyn Nets. So let's bring in our Nets reporter, Nick Friedel. And Nick, you attended Nets shoot-around today, so what's the mood around the team as they prepare to face the Knicks at the Garden tonight?
Malika, they feel really good, which is stunning given the fact that they just lost 11 in a row. But I asked Patty Mills, can you guys still win a title and turn things around? Without hesitation, he looks at me and goes, 100%. I said, why? He said, because we have guys in this locker room who have done it at the highest level. And the feeling is Kevin Durant's coming back in a couple weeks. Ben Simmons is coming back at some point in a couple weeks. Kyrie, potentially with the New York City vax mandate getting pulled back, could be there full-time at some point later in the year. But this is a group that has almost had a cleansing now that James Harden is gone. Bruce Brown said it the other night. We had a team bonding experience in Miami. Everybody's on the same page. We were sitting outside the locker room after that game against Sacramento that they won. It sounded like they had just won a playoff game. This team has confidence again, and they have Seth Curry, who has become the focal point of the offense. Malika, he was joking this morning, I'm tired. I'm not used to having everything run through me, but this is a team that thinks it's going to collect itself after the break and start winning a lot of games.
There's Brenda cleansing, bring out the sage. All right, you said the magic names, though. Where is Ben Simmons today, and how is he fitting into the Nets locker room after his arrival in Brooklyn?
He is at shoot-around. He's getting all the defense in place. And Malika, the early returns from the coaching staff and from his teammates are really good. Thought Patty Mills said something really interesting there. He's known him since Simmons was in elementary school in Australia. He said this guy has a fire to prove to everybody that he can still play at the highest level. And they believe they're bringing him into a community in that Nets locker room that can bring the best out of him. So for all the people that are doubting whether Simmons can return to that level, Mills said not only is he going to be there very soon, he thinks he can get a lot better playing alongside KD and Kyrie.
Well, and listening into that opening press conference, Nick, it surely sounded like he's confident that he can get back out there and get up to playing at the level of basketball he was even before the playoffs last year. Nick Friedel, thank you so much for joining us here on NBA Today. So that is the latest on all things Simmons, but Kyrie, he's back in the spotlight today too. So let's begin by looking at how many games Irving has left in a Nets uniform in the regular season. All right, take a look. 8. He's eligible to play in just 8 of the Nets' final 25 games, since he can't play road games like tonight's against the Knicks or at the Raptors. Remember, they have that mandate up in Canada, as well as Nets home games. So overall, Irving can play just 1 game before March 6th. So earlier today on Get Up, Commissioner Adam Silver, he spoke directly about the vaccine mandate that is preventing Irving from playing those home games. And here's what he had to say.
This law in New York, the oddity of it to me is that it only applies to home players. I mean, I think if ultimately that rule is about protecting people who are in the arena, it just doesn't quite make sense to me that an away player who's unvaccinated can play in Barclays, but the home player can't. So to me, that's a reason they should take a look at that ordinance. I can imagine a scenario where Brooklyn, or as part of New York City, with a new mayor now who wasn't in place, Eric Adams, when that original ordinance was put in place, I could see him deciding to change along the way and say it's no longer necessary to have a mandatory vaccination requirement. As I said, particularly one that only affects home players.
All right, so if the season ended today, Kyrie Irving, he wouldn't be able to play in the play-in tournament either because of the matchups the Nets would face. Again, that's if the seeding ended right now. But I want to go back to what Adam Silver is saying, Perk. What's your immediate reaction there?
Well, the first thing is, can we get an amen that Adam Silver is the best commissioner in sports? I mean, one thing about him is that he is fair, and he always speaks the truth about situations. And I know Kyrie has taken a lot of heat for not getting vaccinated, but Kyrie had a point, and so do Adam Silver. He has a point, too. Like, why are these rules set in place? And it don't make sense. It really don't make sense. And so what we're seeing right now is that we're seeing Adam Silver be the great commissioner that he is and stepping up and saying something, a man of power, to raise eyebrows and raise awareness so that it could put the state of New York on alert and say, hey, we have to go back and do our due diligence and say, you know what? This is not fair. What are we doing? So I love it that Adam Silver is speaking up.
Okay, so there is a hypocrisy there, right? That only home players who are unvaccinated cannot play. It is interesting that that is the sort of delegation there, that's how they're splitting it up. But wouldn't it make more sense to say that nobody who's unvaccinated who can play, not change the rules so that unvaccinated people can play? But this is coming in the wake of us seeing several states across the country lift mask mandates, as we're seeing cases numbers drop, as we're seeing hospitalizations drop. But Ramona, I understand you have some more reporting on this?
Yeah, look, Adam Silver was mostly talking about the hypocrisy between the home and road enforcement of this mandate. He wasn't speaking to any kind of inside information about what New York may or may not do with this vaccine mandate. And I was cautioned by one source who said this is actually a poor context for anything to change in terms of New York's vaccine mandates, because the mayor there, Eric Adams, is dealing with some of the political fallout of having 1,300 city employees be fired for not taking the vaccine. Now, this was 1% of the city workforce. It went through the courts for a long time, but this just happened this week. So the sense that there's anything changing in terms of Kyrie Irving and who can play and who can't play in New York, really poor context and timing for that. I don't anticipate anything that changing soon. Adam was really just pointing out the hypocrisy of the home and road splits.
Well, and it's certainly fair and interesting to point that out. I also, like you said, after laying off that many city workers, it maybe doesn't make sense to then have basketball players be the exception to that rule. Right. But Perk, when you're looking at the Nets here, we just showed only 8 games that Kyrie Irving, if nothing changes, would be available to play down the stretch. How do they make up for the lack of their stars when Kevin Durant out through the All-Star break? Ben Simmons, we don't have a clear timeline on yet.
Well, they got to do it collectively. And if they want to mimic anybody, go Memphis, the dark side, when they didn't have Ja Morant. Even last night, on how to just play team ball, get it done collectively. You don't have to say, oh, we don't have Kyrie, I need somebody to step up and drop 25. No, have 8 or 9 guys in double figures. Post up LaMarcus Aldridge some. Run some pin downs and things to that nature for Patty Mills and Seth Curry. You know, you don't have to do it. One person that court vision, it makes him impossible to guard, because if you don't, you go one-on-one. He can take you to the low block. He can take you to the mid post. He can stretch you out to the 3. He's great at dribble handoffs. He's great at pick and roll. And then on top of that, he's relentless going to the offensive glass, pulling in 14 rebounds, and I guarantee you about 5 of them is on the offensive end. So it's harder to game plan for Jokic because he has so much more to his game than Steph Curry do.
I think it was Tim Legler who said on the show that the word unicorn is entirely overused, but I think it is absolutely fair to label Nikola Jokic an absolute unicorn. What do you think? Who's harder to game plan for, Ramona?
I'm going to go with Steph, because the teams that have slowed down Jokic in the past, they actually don't slow him down. They just try to stop everyone else. Portland did that pretty well in the playoffs last year. And Denver doesn't have the supporting cast that Golden State does. With Steph, one, he can go on these incredible flurries, but teams used to try to rough him up physically, but he spent so much time in the weight room this year. He really can get around a lot of that physical play. And his team, if you try to stop Steph, he has a lot more around him to make you pay.
Well, and that's the thing, right? I don't know if it's about game planning for Nikola Jokic that is easier or harder. I wouldn't want to be the person who's trying to stop him, but the fact that they're without Jamal Murray, the fact that they're without Michael Porter Jr., the fact that all of their attention can now be on Nikola Jokic, and that's what the Warriors had been dealing with before Klay Thompson came back, but now that love is spread out just a little bit. All right, I want to go from the West Coast to the Eastern Conference, because there was a battle last night. The Cavs and the Hawks, they faced off in Atlanta, and Trae Young and Darius Garland, they went head-to-head. We got a preview of All-Star Weekend, so let's take a look at that game, because my goodness, this was a little showing out ahead at Cleveland. Look, there's Darius Garland. We got Trae Young getting ready. All right, let's pick this up in the second quarter. Game tied here. Whew. Trae Young, man, he's got range. Okay, so the Hawks up 3. This is the next possession for Cleveland. Darius Garland drives, a little fadeaway over Kevin Huerter. He had 18 in the first half, but Trae wasn't going to be outdone. He loses it, gets it back high off the glass. Young had 23 points in the first half alone. All right, so let's go over to the second half. Darius Garland knocks down the mid-range. So Garland, he'd finished with 30 points, but it would be Trae's night. So here's the Hawks. Up 5, Trae Young in the corner. You know that's good. Slow. But we're not done here. Hawks up 6 with 1:30 left. Young, look, just buries the floater in the lane. Young had 41 points, 9 assists, his 21st career 40-point game, and the Hawks win 124-116. So the Cavs, they're the biggest surprise, I would say, in the East this season. They're 4th despite the loss, and the Hawks are currently looking at the play-in, but they've looked better as of late. So, Ramona, which of these teams do you see going farther in the East playoff picture this year?
You know, I had a rule after last year's playoff to never pick against the Hawks. I mean, Like, they seem like a team that had that playoff hangover from last year. They haven't really gotten it going early on because I think they had the hype from going to the Eastern Conference Finals. Now they've turned it on. I don't know if they can get far enough up in those East standings. There's a lot of teams ahead of them, and I don't like them necessarily in a first-round matchup with whoever ends up on top. But who knows who's going to be on top? So I want to roll with the Hawks again because I'm not breaking my rule.
Okay, Perk?
You know what? I think Cleveland, I'm not taking anything away from them for us. They have a wonderful team, great coach, and some young up-and-coming stars. But when we talk about the Atlanta Hawks, and if they get into the playoffs, it's one person and one person only that I'm concerned about, and that's Trae Young. He has the capability of being the best player on the floor, no matter who he's playing against. When we talk about some of the most unguardable guards in the league, he's at the top of them with the best of them. I don't know how you could stop him. The only thing you could do is pray and hope that he could miss, but his first step is so quick that he gets to the paint whenever he wants. He has guys that can catch lobs, so you can't really help. He has the float game. He has unlimited range. So when I'm looking at the Hawks, I'm looking at Trae Young, that superstar that's capable of averaging 40 in the playoff series. I got to give the nod to the Atlanta Hawks.
Well, you can take a look at the Eastern Conference standings there, but the other half of that dynamic duo, right, is John the Baptist, John Collins, and he's out for a handful of games. I checked in with him over the weekend as I was preparing for their game when I was on the broadcast, and he said that he's not too concerned about this injury. He's getting some treatment on it. He's rehabbing, but he expects not to miss too many games. But Ramona, you said that you're not quite sure who you trust in terms of the Cavs. Who do you trust in the East?
In the East, I mean, did you see the top 6 seeds? There's 3.5 games in front of. I mean, who comes out? And then the Nets are down there in 8th. I mean, it's ridiculous. But I think you have to trust the Bucks. They won the title last year. How are we not focused on? They won the title last year. We just forget how good they are, and they're a game and a half out of first right now.
Well, Giannis made sure we didn't forget with his 50-piece last night, Big Perk. So who do you trust?
No, he didn't. But here's the thing about the Eastern Conference, right? It's 6 or 7 teams that we all could sit up here and debate and have valid points about why this team probably could come out of the Eastern Conference. And that's the great thing about the game of basketball and the East. And this is why the East is better than the West. And I'm looking and I'm like, I want to go with Philly. I said Philly last week, and then I'm looking at Chicago. I'm like, they rolling, and they don't even have Zach LaVine, Caruso, or Lonzo Ball. And I'm looking at the Milwaukee Bucks with Giannis. I'm looking at the Celtics right now. I'm like, look, I just want to see this play out. I'm going to fall back and not make no more predictions.
Can we have a word for the East leading Miami Heat, though? I mean, that's if we're talking about dark horses, like, it feels weird to say the team in first place is a dark horse, but we forget about Milwaukee and Miami.
What do you call them, Perk? What do you call those men?